In 1962, a furniture restorer in Grand Rapids, Michigan, was handed a walnut dining table that a wealthy family had nearly thrown out. A hot dish had left a white ghost of a ring in the finish, right in the center. Two shops had already told them the whole top had to be stripped and refinished. The old man looked at it for a moment, went to his bench, and came back with a pad of the finest steel wool he had and a little dish of oil. He rubbed the ring gently with the grain for about 4 minutes. The white ring was gone, the finish underneath untouched, and the table looked 100 years old in the good way. He charged them almost nothing. That water ring trick is number 7 on this list, and the one thing he knew about steel wool that kept it from burning his shop to the ground, the plainest and most important thing of all, is number 1. He was not a rare man. In 1962, there was an old-timer like him in half the workshops and kitchens in America, a man or a woman who kept pads of steel wool in 3 or 4 grades and knew exactly what each one was for. They understood it was not one thing but a whole family of tools, coarse enough to strip paint, fine enough to polish glass. We traded that away for a shelf of single-purpose sprays, each sold for one job, and lost the one humble thing that did the work of all of them for $1. That knowledge did not die because it stopped working. A pad of steel wool works exactly as well today as it did in 1962. It died because there is no money in teaching a person that they already own the answer. Number 14 clears a haze off glass that people pay to have a whole window replaced over, and it costs almost nothing. Number 7 is the one from the top of this story, the trick that lifts a white heat ring out of a finish without harming the wood beneath it. And number 1 is the plainest thing on this list. It is the difference between a useful tool and a house fire. And it is the one thing every old-timer knew and almost nobody is taught anymore. These 20 tricks were never about steel wool. They were the mark of a person who knew one cheap thing so well it replaced a cabinet of expensive ones. Not a product, a skill. Every trick on this list, that Grand Rapids man had in his own 2 hands. But before the first one, we have to say the thing the old-timers all knew, because this humble tool can genuinely hurt you if you do not respect it, and respect was the whole secret. If that kind of know-how is worth remembering, subscribe and stay to the end, because the last one is the one that matters most. Let us count down the 20 lost steel wool tricks old-timers swore by that nobody teaches anymore. Number 20, knowing the grades. A person grabs one pad for every job, scratches something delicate with a coarse one, and decides the stuff is no good. Steel wool comes in 8 grades, and the number on the box is the whole secret. It runs from coarse grade 4 for scrubbing off paint, down through the 1s and 2s for general cleaning. At the bottom sit the fine triple-aught and quadruple-aught, so soft they polish glass without a mark. You match the grade to the job, coarse to strip, fine to finish, never the other way. Start finer than you think, because you can always go coarser, but you cannot unscratch. For the person doing careful work, the grades were the whole difference between a repair and a ruined surface. Every hardware man once explained them, and no one does now. Not one tool, a whole family of them. Number 19, lifting rust off tools without gouging. A good tool comes out of a damp cellar spotted with rust, and a person attacks it dry with a coarse pad and leaves it scratched worse than the rust. Rust comes off easiest with steel wool and a lubricant, never dry. You put a little machine oil or penetrating spray on the metal. You take a medium to fine pad and work with the grain of the steel. The oil floats the rust away and keeps the wool from digging in. The tool comes up clean and protected. Wipe it dry and leave a film of oil on it, or the rust comes right back. For the man restoring an inherited toolbox, this brought a whole kit back from the dead in his own 2 hands. Not a tool you scrape raw. Rust you, float off with oil. Number 18, cleaning between coats of finish. A person varnishes a project, the surface dries rough, they put the next coat over it, and the roughness is locked in forever. Between coats, the finest steel wool knocks the surface back to glass. After a coat cures, you rub the whole thing lightly with quadruple-aught wool with the grain. That smooths the fuzz and gives the next coat a surface to grab. Then you must remove every speck of the steel wool dust before you recoat. Use this only with oil-based finishes, never water-based, because the shed fibers will rust and ruin a water finish. For the man building furniture, this quiet step is the whole reason his work looked professional, and the Grand Rapids man did it on every finish he ever laid. Not a finish that stays rough. Fuzz you rub back between coats. Number 17, the dark oak stain from a jar. A person wants old wood to look aged and buys stain after stain that never looks right when the answer is a chemical reaction older than any can. You put a pad of steel wool or a handful of rusty nails into a glass jar. You cover it with plain white vinegar. You let it sit a day or 2, then strain it through a coffee filter. Brushed onto oak or any tannin-rich wood, that liquid reacts with the wood itself and turns it a deep, weathered gray-brown. Not a coat of color, but a change in the wood. Strain out every particle first, or the leftover steel will rust in the grain. For the person matching a new board to a 100-year-old piece, this jar of vinegar did what no store stain could. The Grand Rapids man kept one working on his bench at all times. Not a color you paint on, a reaction you brew. Number 16, polishing brass and copper back to gold. A brass lamp or a copper pot goes dark and dull, and a person buys a special polish for each that dries up in a drawer. The finest steel wool with a little oil brings soft metals back to life. You take quadruple-aught wool and a dab of metal polish or oil. You rub the brass or copper gently, and the dark tarnish lifts, and the warm color underneath comes back. Only the very finest grade, and a light touch, or you scratch a soft metal. For the woman with her mother's brass candlesticks, this brought back in her own hands a shine she thought was gone for good. Not a polish for every metal. One fine pad and a gentle hand.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. A guide for men like us who still believe a man should be able to fix his own home. It's the forgotten handyman secrets, the old-fashioned repair tricks our grandfathers used to fix anything around the house and keep it running for life. But these skills are disappearing fast, and once they're gone for good. Don't pay a repairman ever again. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. Go ahead, I'll wait right here.
Number 15, erasing scuff marks from the floor. Black heel marks streak across a vinyl floor. No mop takes them off, and a person scrubs with cleaners that do nothing. A scuff is rubber left on the floor, and fine steel wool lifts it in a second. You take a fine pad, dry or barely damp, and rub the mark lightly. The rubber comes up, and the floor is clean. Test a hidden corner first and stay to the very fine grades, so you scuff the mark and not the floor. For the mother with a kitchen full of children's shoe marks, this was faster and cheaper than any product on the store shelf. Not a floor you replace, rubber you rub away. Number 14, clearing hard water and haze off glass. A glass shower door clouds over with mineral haze, no spray cuts, and a person is told the glass is etched and gone. Plain glass takes the finest steel wool without a scratch, and it lifts what chemicals cannot. You wet the glass and take a quadruple-aught pad. You rub the mineral haze in small circles, and the deposits come off, and the glass goes clear. Only on plain, uncoated glass, and never on coated, tinted, or low-glare windows, because the wool will haze a coating. For the family with a shower door, they thought ruined. Minutes with a fine pad made it clear as new. Not a pane you replace, a haze you buff away. Stop the count for a moment, because there is one thing about this tool that every old-timer respected and that almost nobody warns you about anymore, and it is not a small thing. Fine steel wool burns, not melts, not smolders, burns fast and hot, and it can start on its own. Those fine fibers have so much surface area that a single spark lights them like tinder. So does a bit of static. So do the two terminals of an ordinary 9-volt battery, which is exactly why it is a survival fire starter. That same property means a pad left in a drawer with loose batteries can catch fire on its own. You never use it near an outlet, a live wire, an open flame, or a grinder throwing sparks. And it means the oily rag and the used steel wool from your finishing project are a genuine fire risk sitting in a wastebasket together. The old-timers were not casual about this. They kept it away from anything electric, they never left it near batteries, and they threw the used bits into a metal can, not a paper bin. The tool is wonderful. It is also the reason a certain number of shop fires start every year, and the difference is entirely in the hands of the person using it. Number 13. Fixing a stripped screw hole. A screw spins in a hole worn too large and will not bite, and a person reaches for a bigger screw. This is an old carpenter's trick that costs nothing. You pull the screw. You wrap a small wisp of steel wool around the threads or pack a bit into the hole and drive the screw back in. The steel fills the space the wood has lost and gives the threads something to grip. Use just a wisp, because too much will split the wood or keep the screw from seating. For the man with a hinge pulling loose from an old door, this wisp of steel wool held it fast for another 20 years. Not a hole you fill with putty. A thread you give something to grab. Number 12. Blocking a mouse gap the honest way. Mice come in through a gap around a pipe, and a person stuffs it with foam they chew through in a week. Mice cannot chew steel, so steel wool packed into a gap stops them cold. You pack it tight into the hole around the pipe. Then, because plain steel wool rusts, you seal over it with caulk or foam. Better yet, use copper or bronze wool that will never rust away. Outdoors, use copper mesh, because steel wool left in the weather rusts to nothing in a season. For the family fighting mice in the pantry, a wad of steel in the right gap ended it where poison never had. Not a gap they chew through, a metal they cannot. Number 11. Scuffing a surface for paint to grip. A person paints over a slick, glossy cabinet, and the paint peels off in sheets within a month. Paint needs a tooth to hold, and fine steel wool gives it one fast. You rub the whole glossy surface with a fine pad until the shine is gone and it feels evenly dull. Then wipe every speck of dust away and paint. The paint grabs the scuffed surface and holds instead of peeling. Get every fiber of the steel wool off before you paint, or you will paint rust spots right into the finish. For the woman redoing her kitchen cabinets, this one step, done with her own hands, was the difference between a paint job that lasted 10 years and one that failed by spring. Not paint that peels, a shine you knock off first. Number 10. Cleaning the oven racks. Oven racks come out coated in baked-on grease no spray touches, and a person buys caustic cleaner that fills the house with fumes. Steel wool and hot soapy water do it with no chemicals. You soak the racks in hot soapy water to soften the grease, then scrub them with a medium pad, and the burnt-on residue lifts away. A little elbow grease, no poison. For the family that hated the smell of oven cleaner, this got the racks cleaner than the spray ever did. Not a chemical you breathe. Grease you scrub off with soap. Here is the part of his story we have skipped. The Grand Rapids man did not always treat steel wool with the respect he preached. He learned it the hard way in 1949, when he was young and careless in his first shop. He had spent a day rubbing down an oil finish with fine steel wool. At the end of it, he swept the used pads and oily rags into a wooden crate in the corner and went home. He came back the next morning to a scorched wall and a crate of ash, a fire that had gone out on its own only because nothing near it could spread it. It could have been the whole building. An older tradesman down the street who had seen it happen before did not lecture him. He walked him back to the crate, pointed at the ashes, and said the only thing about the trade the young man never forgot. That is the tool. Respect it, or it burns you out. From that morning on, he never once left an oily rag or a used pad in anything but a sealed metal can, and he taught every apprentice who ever passed through the same lesson first. And that lesson, the plainest and most important thing about this whole humble tool, is number 1. Number 9. Deburring a fresh cut in metal or wood. A person cuts a pipe and leaves a sharp burr that catches skin and ruins the fit, then digs for a special deburring tool. Fine steel wool knocks a burr down in seconds. You fold a fine pad and run it over the cut edge a few times. The little sharp fibers roll off and leave a clean edge. Light pressure only. You are cleaning the edge, not reshaping it. For the man doing his own plumbing, this smoothed a cut copper pipe so a fitting slid on clean. The Grand Rapids man kept a fine pad in his apron for exactly this. Not a tool you buy to debur, an edge you knock down fast. Number 8. Reviving a worn shine on wood without refinishing. A table or a chair goes dull and tired, and a person assumes it needs a full strip and refinish, which is days of work. Often the finish is fine and just needs cutting back. You rub the whole piece gently with the finest wool and a little paste wax with the grain. That lifts the dead grime and hazy top layer and leaves a soft satin glow. Always with the grain, never across it, and always the finest grade. For the family with a tired old sideboard, an hour with fine wool and wax made it look cared for again without stripping a thing. Not a piece you refinish, a finish you cut back and revive. Number 7. Lifting a white heat ring out of a finish. This is the fix from the top of our story, the one that saved the walnut table. A hot dish leaves a white ring in a finish, and 2 shops will tell you the whole top must be stripped. That ring is moisture trapped in the top layer, not damage to the wood, and fine steel wool with oil lifts it out. You take quadruple-aught wool and a little oil and rub the ring gently with the grain. The trapped moisture and the hazed finish come away, and the clear finish returns. Go slow and light, and stop the moment the ring is gone, so you cut only the haze and not the finish itself. For the family who thought their table was ruined, 4 minutes brought it back. Not a finish you strip, a trapped cloud you rub out. Number 6. Cleaning the sole plate of an iron and other odd metal. A clothes iron gets a brown crust, a cast pan a rough spot, a metal tool gets gummed up, and a person throws the thing out. Fine steel wool cleans odd metal jobs nothing else touches. On a cool iron, a fine pad rubs the scorch off the sole plate. On a stuck spot of a cast pan, medium wool scours it back to iron. Know your surface first, and never take steel wool to a non-stick coating or anything plated, or you will destroy it. For the woman whose iron dragged and stuck, a minute with fine wool made it glide again. Not an iron you replace, a crust you scour off. Number 5. Sharpening scissors and cleaning the blades. Scissors go dull and gummy, and a person buys a new pair. Cutting through a folded pad of steel wool both cleans and lightly hones the blades. You fold a pad over several times and cut through it a dozen times with the dull scissors. The fine steel cleans the gum off the edges and lightly touches them up. This is a touch-up, not real sharpening, but it buys a dull pair a good while more. For the mother whose sewing scissors had dulled, a scrap of steel wool gave them back their bite for free. Not scissors you replace, an edge you touch up by cutting. Number 4. Restoring the grip on worn stone and concrete steps. This one goes the other way because sometimes you want roughness, not smoothness. A worn stone threshold or a painted concrete step goes slick and dangerous, and a coarse pad can key the surface. You scrub the slick spot to rough it and clean the grime out of the pores, giving a shoe something to grip. Wear gloves for the coarse grades because they will shred your fingertips. For the family with a slick-painted porch step that had already caused one fall, roughing it up was a 5-minute safety fix, not a step you re-pour, a slick surface you key. Number 3. Making an old key work again. An old key sticks and grinds in a lock, and a person calls a locksmith. Often the key is just corroded, and fine steel wool cleans it in seconds. You rub the key all over with a fine pad to take off the corrosion built up in the cuts. Then you wipe it and add a touch of dry graphite, never oil, which gums a lock-up. A cleaned key turns a sticking lock smooth again. For the man fighting a stubborn backdoor lock every morning, a minute of cleaning the key ended it. Not a lock you replace, a key you clean. Number 2. Keeping a whole cabinet of cleaners in one drawer. The real trick the old-timers knew was not any single use. It was that this one cheap thing, in the right grades, replaced a shelf of expensive single-purpose products. A person today owns a rust remover, a glass cleaner, a metal polish, a scuff remover, an oven cleaner, and a deburring tool, each in its own bottle, half used and drying out. The old-timer owned 3 grades of steel wool, a can of oil, and a bottle of vinegar, and did the work of all of it. He understood one tool deeply instead of owning a tool for everything. Learn one thing all the way down, and it replaces 10 things you barely understand. For the person with a small budget, this was not thrift. It was mastery, not a bottle for every job. One tool you know completely. Number 1. Respecting the fact that it burns. And it is the thing this whole list has been circling since the first minute. Before any single trick on this list, before the water ring and the rust and the shine, the Grand Rapids, man knew one thing about steel wool that mattered more than every use combined. It burns easily, and it can start on its own, and that knowledge is the whole difference between a tool and a tragedy. So he never stored it near batteries, because 2 terminals touching a pad will light it. He never used it near an outlet, a live wire, or a flame. And he never left used steel wool and an oily rag together in a paper bin, because that combination has burned down more shops than any spark, quietly, overnight, with no one there. The used pads and the oily rags went into a sealed metal can every single time, no exceptions. He did not learn that from a book. He learned it at a scorched wall in 1949 from an older man who pointed at a crate of ashes and said, "That is the tool. Respect it or it burns you out." Here is the part worth sitting with, and it is the whole point of this list. Every other trick on here can save you money or save a thing you love. This one saves your house, and it is the one thing about steel wool that almost no one is taught anymore, because the box does not shout it and the trick videos never mention it. The tool is genuinely wonderful, one cheap, humble thing that does the work of a whole cabinet. But it is only wonderful in the hands of someone who respects what it is, and what it is, underneath all 20 of these tricks, is tinder. Store it dry, away from anything electric. Keep it clear of sparks and flame. And throw the used bits and the oily rags in a metal can, always. Not the most clever trick on this list. The plainest, and the only one that keeps every other one from costing you everything. None of it needed a shelf of products. That was the point, and it is the thing the store aisle will never tell you. A person who understood one humble tool all the way down owed nothing to a cabinet of bottles. They floated the rust off with oil and lifted the ring out of the walnut. They brewed the stain in a jar, knocked the shine off for paint, and packed the mouse gap tight. And they did all of it while respecting the one hard truth about the tool, that it is tinder, and treating it accordingly. That knowledge was never taken from us for our safety. If anything, it was the opposite, because the most important part, the part about the fire, is the part that got dropped first. It was buried because there is no money in a person who already owns the answer and knows how to use it without burning the house down. We did not lose the steel wool. It is $1 a box on the bottom shelf of every hardware store in the country. What we lost was the person who knew it completely, and an old tradesman said it best, standing over a crate of ashes. That is the tool. Respect it, or it burns you out.